go ahead and pass the presenter rights to Marion. And here we go. Marion, you have the presenter ball. You can go ahead and unmute, and
Okay.
we're ready.
Oh, and you're on my slides. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for showing up late on Friday afternoon. We really appreciate that. We have, as Anne Marie said, we have three great presenters today, so you're not going to hear much from me. We're going to get right into it. These are the presenters we'll hear today. Mike Saenz from Socorro ISD, Liz Moya from Isleta Community Learning Center, and then Denise Guckert giving us a sample, an example of an ESL lesson based on the standard. So I'm going to go right ahead and introduce Mike to you. Mike is finishing his 13th year in adult education this spring. He has taught ESL, high school equivalency GED in English and Spanish, college and career exploration, ESL for professionals, transitions to college and workplace literacy classes, which covers pretty much everything, right? He's taught everything. He is the lead teacher for the Socorro ISD Community Education Department. His many duties include mentoring and orienting new staff, writing and creating curriculum and a scope and sequence for his program, and offering support to teachers. Mike has also collaborated on projects that included the rollout of the first content standards in 2008, earned his adult ed teaching credential, career pathways, and the upcoming standards for academic industry clusters. So thank you, Mike, for being here, and we look forward to hearing how things are going. And in that list should also be included that he's a coach for the current content standards project. So we're looking forward to hearing what you've been doing.
How's it going, everybody? I hope you guys can hear me all right.
Sound good?
Sound good? All right, good. Well, welcome, everybody. My part is going to be of what we've done here at Socorro. We're part of the consortium here in El Paso with Isleta ISD and El Paso ISD. But at our program, it was Sandy Garza and I working on these standards, coaching with our teachers. And what we've done so far is the modules we've seen, I guess all of us during the webinars from the state, we've been using those. Maybe tweaking them just a little bit to fit our program, but basically what we've seen is what our teachers have seen also. And from July to December, we focused on rolling out the modules just to lay a foundation. We had a couple of new teachers. We have some incumbent teachers that have been here for a couple of years, so everybody was starting brand new with these standards. This semester, January to March, we started looking now at lesson plans, unpacking the standards, all of us together. Understanding by design or backward design, and also some of the rubrics that we've been using or not been using in the classroom. Also, this last 2 months, we started our classroom visits. We started visiting the daytime and afternoon classrooms. We're continuing this coming up the end of April, starting in May, beginning of May, with the evening classes. Those are the night classes. And what we're looking for is not a gotcha moment. It's just to support the teachers and their lesson plans, make sure that their objectives are posted and the instruction matches what's on their lesson plans. And in the end of the school year in May, our last PLC that we're going to have a needs assessment regarding the standards. Do they need more practice? Are they comfortable with them? Also, on lesson plans, we're going to talk about those for the coming year, and also some rubrics that we're going to create some. And also discuss these classroom visits. And these are, we're going to discuss them, no names attached to any of the visits, just to give them feedback and help them out with whatever they need. Go ahead, Marianne. For our coaching process, Sandy and I have PLCs twice a month. These are on Fridays from 1 to 4 o'clock. And we try to get all full-time and part-time teachers together. Sometimes it's hard to get these part-time teachers because they run out of hours or they have daytime jobs. That cuts into that Friday planning time. And for these, we included all the teachers. Our director, Mr. Fraga, wanted to include everybody in this. We have about 20 teachers that in our program. So he wanted to hit everybody with the standards and make sure everybody got it from ESL, HSE, and GED. The basic and IEP instructors also were included in this. What we did was we unpacked the standards. Like I said, as we were learning them, they were learning them too. So we did them nice and slow, and during 3 hours, had enough time for questions. We also discussed the backward design, which is like, what did you want your students to learn with these standards at the end of the lesson or at the end of your objective? We also shared lesson plans by the content areas. So the ESL teachers work together, GED teachers work together, and the IETs and basic skills teachers also worked, all of us together in the same room. And like I said, we started the classroom visits this March to support the standard implementation and see if they need any help or how we could help them during this process. Is there any questions? Let me know, because I'm partly looking at the screen and not at the chat box, so just stop me if I missed one of your questions. Okay, guys. Some of the challenges we had is the pre and post visits with teachers. Like I mentioned, some of them are part-time teachers, so we can't really meet with them because they run out of hours. And I don't think any of them were going to volunteer some other time because they got busy schedules, they got families and or other jobs. So that was one of our challenges. And like we did our gap analysis, and I'm sure most of you guys know some of our materials are not aligned with the standards. So that's one of the things we're going to work on. Coming up is how to align and fill in those gaps from the gap analysis to make sure these materials are getting close to being aligned with their lessons and their objectives and the standards. And speaking of that, there was some confusion between the objectives and the benchmarks. We were looking at, some of the teachers were confused. Are they looking at the sub area or which part of the standard they were supposed to use in their lesson plans or post in their classrooms? So that was a bit of a confusion. Or if they were going to write the whole benchmark or just some of the verbs or the beginning part. So we discussed that, and we're working on that also. And then the last of the challenges was which lesson plan to use. We had our own a couple of lesson plan templates that we used here in Socorro, but then we borrowed the one that Austin Community College presented us last, I think it was August or September, the one with those drop-down menus, and it has all the standards and benchmarks there. So some of our teachers with real good at computer literacy started using those, and they worked well for them. Some of us older, I'll include myself in that group, I used the old template and didn't just type in or copied and pasted my objectives and standard in there. So there was still a challenge with that. It was a confusion with that, and then I'll get into that, how we got into all these challenges on the next couple of slides. And what went well so far, all the teachers have been attentive and supportive. This is one of our things that our program director wanted, is to everybody get in here and get these standards and everybody trained and unpacking these by December. And so far we've done a good job about that. Some of our new teachers we hired this semester are still trying to catch up, and I'm working with those teachers on those and unpacking those standards. And the standards for us is a non-negotiable. It's not if you want to use them or not. It's something that Mr. Frau wanted to help our students. And that's, I guess, our goal is the students in mind at the end, is getting these students ahead to the next level, either into a career path or a educational path, a higher ed path. And this process, it has enabled us, like I said, on the previous screen, more collaboration between our teachers. Like I said, sometimes they don't have common planning time. So during these PLCs, we got together and shared lesson plans and looked at each other, see what they were doing, saw the two different lesson plan templates, and see how they were working on those, and kind of share ideas if the rigor was there, or that's some of the stuff we were looking at in the classroom. So that was great, sharing those lesson plans. And what also is on one of the non-negotiables we have here is the Dynazyx foldables and the Alice 9 word study. That helps a lot with vocabulary, especially for ESL students. And we shared some of the ideas and how the standards are going to align with these two resources that we're using. And like I said, from day one, we let the teachers know that we're learning with them. So like I said, we're not the experts, we're getting there. And if we had any questions, I guess we went back to these webinars and asked them there or learned them from there. But like I said, they have all the support from Sandy Garza and I, and Mr. Fraga, and the administration here at our program. So they're not alone in this process. Go ahead. And I might have gone a little bit fast because I know it's a Friday, and but go ahead, Marianne.
That is an interesting question. I wonder if any of the others of you using that?
Marion, I'm
Yes.
sorry. You were muted. So can you
Oh,
start again?
sorry.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
had muted
Yeah, I
everybody.
know.
So okay.
Okay, so thank you, Mike. And I was just going to go to Judy's question in the chat, which is, are we ever going to have a chance to share lesson plans between programs? And I wondered if any of the rest of you, she is using that the Excel spreadsheet lesson plan template from ACC also, and I wonder if any of the others of you are using that template as well. Or how have you dealt with the whole question of lesson plan forms? Are you using your own form? Are you using the one we gave you in the training? Are you using ACC? I know, Mike, I'm not sure if you talked about it today, but you said your teachers can use whichever lesson plan. Oh, you did. Whichever lesson plan template they want to use.
Yes, for now, whatever they're comfortable with. Like I said, we haven't decided as a program. Maybe for the next coming school year over the summer, we'll decide which one we want to use. But like I said, maybe during the next webinar, I can maybe scan a couple of lesson plan templates from both of them, so you guys can take a look and see what we're doing.
Okay. Any other questions about lesson plans or about Felicia, you're using the template also. Oh, from the training. Okay, good. Thank you. All right. So I think we're using a lot of different ones out there. We are creating a modified version of the form we received from you.
And Marianne, one of our teachers, she's great with Excel. She actually gave some of our teachers that are not great with Excel, like myself, a little, during one of the PLCs, she gave us a little lesson on how to work with that lesson plan template and how to work with it. And
nice.
User friendly, so she actually helped out with it, and it was great.
That is a good idea, yeah. Maybe that could be something else that we do electronically for people. I'm just looking back at your comments. No, it's not, Ken. It's not necessary to use that ACC template. I was just curious how many people were using it. So any other questions for Mike? Or any other thoughts about the process, his process or your process? Christy, you're using your current one, the E5 template. Okay, thank you. Go ahead and post your questions anytime. We're going to go on to Liz. As soon as I can click on this little thing. There she is, Liz Moya. She is celebrating her 19th work anniversary this spring, and it's good to know that she's actually still celebrating it, as opposed to bemoaning it. She has taught most classes under the adult education umbrella, from ESL to ABE and transitions to IET. She is the curriculum specialist for Isleta Community Learning Center and the PD coordinator for the Far West Adult Education Consortium. Her involvement with adult learners extends to the development of many firsts, such as Spanish GED, transitions, and orientation classes. Ms. Moya has also collaborated on projects that include the rollout of the first content standards in 2008, the Teacher Credentialing Project, Career Pathways, Integrated Career Academy, and the upcoming Standards for Academic Industry Clusters. So thank you, Liz, for being here, and let's hear what's going on with you. Liz will
Hello.
also... There you are.
Hello? Yes?
Yes.
Yay! Well, hello, everybody. I know. Actually, I've been having a couple of technical difficulties. I've had issues with my internet today, and then I was on the line, and then I got disconnected. So I'm hoping y'all are having a great day. We're experiencing some windy weather over here in El Paso, so I'm wondering if that's it, or maybe I need to pay my phone bill. One of those two. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about our program. I am part of the Isleta Community Learning Center. That's just a shot of our school, but I'm also part of the Far West Consortium, working with Mike as well as Sandy Garza and Ana Herrera. But I'm housed at Isleta. It is a standalone site. We have approximately maybe 28 instructors, and we have 3 different teaching schedules. And so it makes it very interesting to work with our teachers, but I'm very fortunate knowing that all of our teachers, with the exception of 2, are housed at our site. And I know that that's a benefit compared to many programs out there across Texas. So I just wanted to paint that picture. And let's go to the next slide. So some of the challenges that we experienced in rolling out the standards and having our professional development was that, like many of you out there, most of our staff are part-time. They cannot exceed 19 and a half hours, and they teach 19 of those hours in the classroom. They have a half-hour prep time, and that half hour is spread across a week. So it's more like 5 minutes. They come in 5 minutes before class starts. I didn't write the hours nor the schedule, but that's just the way it is, and so I have to work with that. And so it's really difficult for me to meet with them. So I suggested a couple of things. I asked my director in our school district if I would be allowed to exceed the 19 and a half hours so that we could have professional development, and the answer was no. Then I asked, well, can I cancel class so that we can have professional development, and the answer was no. So then I asked, well, what if I get a substitute teacher to cover the classroom teacher and do pullouts, and that wasn't a possibility because of budget and district policy issues. So my fourth option was, well, while the teachers are working with their students and the students are working on a group project or self-directed learning, I would coordinate with the teacher of when that would occur, and the teacher and I would either sit outside the classroom or maybe in a table in the back of the classroom so that the teacher was still available for his or her students, and anytime a student had a question, they could still work with the teacher. And so the teacher and I had flexibility knowing that we were going to be interrupted, but it was the format that worked the best because it was face-to-face, and I could answer any questions they had, and of course they could answer any questions that I had. We did that a couple of times. The other thing that we did was we did a lot of online communication, and that worked okay for my techie folks. For those who are not so technology-driven, then we had to find some type of common planning time, which we did not have. So I have on the screen that the part-time staff, this was a secondary priority, not necessarily on their end, but on our end because of the way our program is structured. We don't have the teachers in mind as far as ensuring that they have the tools they need to be conducive in the classroom. And so we're looking at rearranging our schedule for next year. That's a different topic, but just wanted to share that with you. Another thing, many of our teachers that work in the evening have full-time jobs during the day, and so when they meet at night, they don't have time to come in earlier. And if they do have time, they're trying to run copies or get resources or trying to get their classroom set up or call students that were absent. And so, again, it's not that it's a secondary priority on their end. It's just the way it works out for our program. Everyone is focused on preparing classes and lesson planning, not so much meeting with Liz about the rollout of content standards. And just like Mike mentioned, we do have ongoing integration of new teachers. And so right now we're averaging one new teacher every 3 weeks, believe it or not. So I don't know what's in the water, but those are the changes we've been going with. So let's go to the next slide. Let's get to the positive stuff. So here are some experiments that we tried out. And when I say we, it's me and my two other personalities, me, myself, and I. So with our staffing, like I mentioned before, I tried working around through their prep time. I pulled them out during when the students were working on group activities. And then aside from that, one of our initiatives that Marian had showed us during the workshop was to get someone to work with us in rolling out the standards. So I selected some superstars, and I also worked with some diamonds in the rough. Let me explain a little bit about what I mean. So I had some superstars. I'm sure y'all have them. These are those people that they are really great at receiving instruction, and then they take it above and beyond what you had ever expected. These are those people that they have great people skills, and they're great listeners, and they have a soft way of approaching people with suggestions. They're good at providing feedback and encouragement. And so I had separate sessions with them. I was allowed to have substitutes cover for their class while I had that one-on-one training with them. I had one in the morning and I had one in the evening. And then I have my diamonds in the rough. My diamonds in the rough are those people that need a little polishing. They're a little rough around the edges. They might not exactly be on board as far as accepting new challenges. They get along with others, but they're also the kind of people that might weigh everyone else down with their negativity. So I thought, well, what if I try to make them part of this initiative in rolling out the standards? And so I selected a couple of folks, and surprisingly enough, my superstars were part-timers, and my diamonds in the rough were not. And so we met, and one of them ran with it, and they were really good. They met with other instructors, and so I was able to bring them into this new initiative. So I was really happy and excited about that, because instead of this person kind of weighing down everyone else, they became part of the cheerleading squad and a supporter for the other instructors. My other diamond kind of fizzled out and told me early on, this is not for me. I don't get it. I don't want to do this. And so it became kind of like a one-on-one learning initiative with that teacher. So I can't say that that was a negative. I think that turned out really well. And then adding public recognition. On those opportunities that we did have, our PLCs or our professional development days, I would try to find something good in everyone. Something that was sincere, something that was genuine. I would talk about something specifically that they were adding in their lesson plans, maybe someone who stepped out of their comfort zone and they tried something new and it was connected with the standards or with the benchmarks, or maybe someone collaborated with another teacher and they shared ideas. And so anything that I could find that I saw growth, that was recognized in those staff meetings, and I could give them a little trinket, or it was just we all applauded, or just merely sharing out what they did. And then for those who were struggling, and everyone did. We all struggled. I struggled when I was learning the standards, and those were private conversations. When I felt that they were kind of going off the path, I would meet with them privately, and I would say, tell me what you mean by this. Help me understand. And then we would just go line item by line item, and usually they would see how they kind of veered off the track. And then the last part was adding value. Many of the teachers were struggling with having to adopt a brand new thing. Oh, here's the latest and greatest, Liz. You're going to tell me about these standards, and I know that 5 years from now they're not going to be here anymore. But I tried to allay their fears by saying, we don't have to just start all over. Let's look at those great lesson plans that you always teach, those same lessons that we have to do time and time again. Maybe it's a reading lesson or soft skills or a grammar lesson. Let's revisit those and see how we can modify them so that they're applicable to what the benchmark states as far as a mastery skill. And I want to be clear that this was not a Band-Aid approach where they said, okay, I'm just going to change the verb of my previous lesson plan, and boom, now I have my new revised lesson plan with a benchmark. That's not the way it was. We implemented differentiated learning, we scaffolding. They put their objectives. They added the assessment. They started with the assessment in mind, and then that's how we. That's what I mean by modified. It had a complete overhaul, but the teacher was able to maintain the integrity of that lesson they thought was valuable to their students, and so that's what I mean by connecting the lesson activity to the standards. I do see here some of the comments that someone is saying here. Let me see, Ms. Judy. She's saying same here. I don't know which part she's referencing, but I did notice it. I think that was during the staff meeting issues that we were having. And I also see Henry, I believe it is, that everyone's part-time and they have to rely on lead teachers. So I can see how some folks, I'm glad that we're on the same page here. And so are there any questions out there that you might have for me? And so I think if you have any questions, I just want to thank you for your time.
Thanks, Liz. You have a wealth of experience there, and it sounds like you struck a few nerves among participants. So Patrick Henry was saying he has the same problem with his program as far as everyone being part-time and having a hard time finding a time to meet. I wonder if other people have those challenges, and do you have other suggestions about how to find that time to spend with the teachers to get them to really understand the standards and how it is going to have an effect on their teaching? As Liz, you did such a nice job of explaining that you don't have to start from scratch. A lot of the things we're already doing are good and relevant and fit with the standards, but it's also not just a Band-Aid where you just change one word and you're good. So
right.
That's a fine tightrope to walk. I wonder if any of the rest of you, how are you dealing with the issue of finding time to meet with your teachers? Salida, I like your approach on building your
team. It connects on the next one.
Yes.
It's a cliffhanger.
Yeah. Okay, here are the rest of my discussion questions. You also talked, Liz, about your stars and your diamonds in the rough and how you took advantage of the people that are the early adopters that we all hopefully have, and then the people who are more resistant, but giving them some kind of a leadership role helps them really get buy-in. I thought that was a creative approach, and I wonder if any of the rest of you have tried that. How are you dealing with how are you bringing along your diamonds in the rough? I know, it's Friday afternoon.
I think they're all typing. They're typing away, so it takes some time.
Okay.
Yeah, or maybe they're having poor internet connection.
My teacher is 60 miles away. That makes it hard, yeah.
Mm.
God, yes, the challenges. Okay. 140 part-time teachers. Oh, my gosh.
Wow.
So having common meeting goals, planning sessions, leads, and unpacking standards with snacks and treats help. Yes, absolutely. A time-honored tradition in adult education.
Yes.
There are still those who can't make it, so we're doing online sessions with video. Nice. Good solution. Helping with lesson plans, syllabi, copying, being a cheerleader and an intermediary. Great. Okay, thank you. I see you're all working hard on this project, and there are some challenges that I think it looks like a lot of us have in common, so that's great. I like the idea of public recognition also. So any creative ways you have of recognizing people who are doing a good job?
Marion Morgan had a great comment
yes,
that just came in.
My multitasking skills aren't the best, but I'm going to copy it for everyone.
Well,
I've worked on reframing the new requirements by posing them as opportunities to access new resources. That's awesome. Interact with their colleagues and streamline their preparation processes. That sounds very positive. Like every one of those is something that teachers want. So that sounds great. It'd be nice to hear more about how you did that. How did you tie the new standards to new resources? Oh, did I? I didn't send it. Sorry.
And I think Valida was saying making sure they're feeling important with their input on everything.
Exactly. Building the relationships, Janet. I'm reading your comment. The more that connected they feel, the more open they are to change. That is so true. It's true in teaching students, and it's true in working with teachers that those relationships are so important. Thank you, everyone. And any thoughts about bringing in new teachers? Are you all hiring one teacher every 3 weeks? That sounds amazing.
Okay, that's kind of like an accident. It's not like we plan it that way. Okay. It's just sometimes we have right. enrollment and we need a new teacher, and then or a teacher gets a full-time job, or they decide to do something crazy like get married. It's like, what's up with that?
Why would that take priority over your work? I
know. It's like, what do you mean you're going to have a baby? Like, no, don't do that.
Marion, we
yes.
have someone that has their hand up. Jacqueline Sanderson has her hand up. Jacqueline, did you want to unmute, or did you want to share something in the chat pod, or unmute? You can let us know, or you may just have. Okay, she's got her hand down. Okay.
So do I need to click on the person's hand when they have their hand up? Or
no, you can't do that. But she just put
it
down. So I just wanted to make sure that she didn't have a question.
Okay, so Kenneth is talking about collecting gift cards, motivators. Sounds like a great idea. That's a lot of work though, going around and getting those lined up. So good for you. Okay, any other questions for Liz before we move on to our lesson? I had to draft my wife. She appreciated that.
Very creative. I like that.
We've had 5 new teachers so far this year. I've been able to meet with them, either small group or individuals, to share about. Great. It's wonderful that there's so much hiring going on. I don't know about you guys in Texas, but in California we had some really dark years, though, where it was pretty much layoffs, not hiring. So it's nice to be in this period when we actually can hire people. Onboarding check. You have an onboarding checklist. Yeah, great. Okay, thank you, everyone. Let's go on to Denise.
Okay, Mary. Okay.
Yes.
Hopefully she is. Let's just see if, yes. We are all having internet and phone issues today, everybody. Denise, can you let me know, are you on? Have you called back in yet? Can you unmute and let me know if you're back on? Okay, let's go ahead and just start, Marion. I'm sorry, because I saw that she's not on. Let's just go ahead and start, and we'll see if she's going to be able to call back in. Let's go ahead and introduce her.
So just introduce her in the hopes that she'll be here in the next 2 minutes?
Okay, she is listening. Denise,
okay.
Where are you? Which call-in number are you? Do you know? Okay, go ahead and just unmute then when you're ready. Thank you, Marion.
Okay, so Denise Guckert earned her MA from the University of Texas at Austin in Foreign Language Education, the Foreign Language Education Center, and also holds a Texas Secondary Teaching Certificate for English, Spanish, and English as a Second Language. She's been involved in adult education for over 20 years, serving as an instructor, technology coordinator, and coordinator. As coordinator for the Texas Central Great Center, Ms. Guckert developed, implemented, and coordinated professional development for adult education administrators, teacher trainers, teachers, and teaching assistants. After working as a college and career readiness consultant for the Adult Education State Office, Texas Learns, Denise joined the program specialist team at the newly created Texas Workforce Commission Office of Adult Education and Literacy. Currently, Ms. Guckert serves on the as the Adult Education Coordinator for the Austin Independent School District. So, Ms. Guckert, thank you very much for being here, and we're looking forward to hearing about your ESL example lesson.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
Now we can hear you.
Can
Hi.
hear me? Excellent.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here on a Friday. Today, what I did, I prepared a strategy that you could use as part of a lesson. This is an ESL lesson. However, I know there's math teachers and ELA teachers. This particular strategy can be used in any content area. However, I developed an entire lesson that's available on the COP, on the Train PD portal, and you can access that and go through the entire lesson, and I hope you use it if it fits in with what you need to teach in your classes, and give me some feedback on it. But what I'm going to be doing today, it's an ESL lesson on story elements. It's going to discuss genre, main ID details, author's point of view, and purpose. And we're going to talk just about the guided practice portion of the lesson. Before the guided practice, we've already reviewed, we've done introductions, to the lesson, we've done the presentation, and then the I do, or the teacher modeling, and going over it as a whole group. We've already done that. And now this section would be the guided practice. On the next slide, I'm going to tell you what standard I'm working with. There were 4 standards identified by you guys as being more difficult, I guess, to address. And this one was in reading. It was the ELL reads a variety of texts at different levels of complexity. But the 2 substandards under there was really one under there. It was 2, but one of them was read critically to analyze information and make connections to interpret author's purpose and viewpoints. That particular one was identified as being difficult to address with like materials that are typically available for ESL. You probably see this a lot more when you're working with your high school equivalency textbooks in English language arts. I also, though, because I've dealt with it, it just goes along with it, I included standard number B today, which is identify the central ideas or hypothesis and supporting details. These are actually substandards. They're under the standard for reading skills for ESL. There are benchmarks for all 6 levels underneath that. And I can tell you, I went through the benchmarks, and there were so many of them, at least except for the very basic level, it didn't really deal specifically with main idea or with author's viewpoint, but all the other levels had something that dealt with getting the main idea details or looking at the viewpoint or, the author's purpose and things like that. So there are several benchmarks at several levels. So you could do this with a multi-level classroom. You would have to do some differentiation with your reading levels. But for right now, this is geared towards a beginning class. I did that because in ESL, we have mostly beginners in my program, and I find it more difficult to find reading material that's interesting at that level for adults and free things online that you can find. So I chose that to try to address the need that we always see with the beginning literacy students. One of the things I want to stress is, beginners in ESL, they still have thinking skills and critical thinking skills, and a lot of times they just can't express it. You do have to teach things with a lower vocabulary level, but the concepts you can teach starting with very, very low-level literacy reading. So we can still teach these concepts, but using a very low literacy level for the reading itself and for the presentation. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, this is called Appointment Partners. This is going to be our guided practice. Appointment Partners is a strategy I used to call round the clock when I used it, but I found this handout online. And Marianne, if you'll pull it up, it's available in the COP, and you can, it's a one-pager PDF document. Looks like that. You can scroll up and down if you want to see it. It's just a clock that has the numbers 12 through 11, and it has the instructions at the top. Find a partner for the times below. Write your partner's, really it's their name and the blank for that time. And then when you are asked to go to a particular appointment at a particular time, you go meet with that partner. So it's a way of getting your students moving in the classroom and finding partners. You don't have to use all of the time periods. If you only have 4 activities, you can tell them to make an appointment for 2, 4, 6, and 8. Let's go back to the slide, and we'll go to the next slide. I have the instructions here. It's a fun way to move students. You can also complete activities at each station. They're kind of like mini stations. And one thing I like about this for guided practice is that you can, because it stops and ends, you can guide the students, you can review, you can go over their answers before they move on. And I think that's a useful thing for guided practice. You could also use this for independent practice, but the teacher would not give as much support as the students went around. You'd pass these clocks out. The students would make appointments with the classmates. At the end of each, you'd review the activity and then go on to the next appointment. And then you'd go over the instructions as you need to, and they would do it on their own. We're going to do, on this one, we would do there's 11 tasks to complete, not 12. It says 11. Basically, they can do up to 11 activities because there's 11, even though it says you're doing 1 to 12, it actually is just 11 appointments that you would make. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so the first is 12 p.m. Now, they've already done this entire process that I'm going to show you using a resource on the Marshall Adult Stories. The resource is right there. When you go on the COP and download the PowerPoint, everything is hyperlinked. So you could hyperlink and go to everything. If you're presenting this in your classroom on an LCD projector, you could hyperlink right then. If you have audio, there is audio on the website that actually reads the story to you. If you don't have that technology, you could have printed versions and you could read the story yourself to students. Basically, the students at this point, they would go through this. They'd answer the questions, discuss them, maybe write the definitions down, talk about the pictures themselves. Because the first, just so I could let you know, when we introduced it, I used a poem about a mother. It's on this website, and we did the same process that we're doing here. We did it with that little poem, and now they're doing guided practice using a very, very short story. It's a text that's a story. Okay, let's go to now. After that, we go over the answers. Everybody go to their 1 o'clock partner. The 1 o'clock partner, we do the first and second reading. Again, if you're on the PowerPoint in your classroom and you have internet, if you click on that picture that says first time reading, it'll take you directly to the website and it will read to you. It'll actually say, click here to continue. It gives directions that the students are going to do choral reading. They're going to read along with the person that's there. So if you don't have that capacity, you would just read aloud and ask your students to read with you. Then the students would do the second reading. The second reading, they would listen either to you or online to the narrator. They're online, and they just listen and follow along. At that point, you're ready to say, okay, now let's go to your 2 p.m. appointment, and they move to 2 p.m. Here we have the third reading. The third reading is actually the last reading that they do online. This is basically listening, but it's at a very normal pace. It's much quicker, and they have to read more quickly as they follow along. The last reading is not on there, but I want them to do it as part of this activity. When you go to the PowerPoint that I posted, it'll actually, it says last reading on it, and I covered up, click the play button in white so you don't try to click it. You have to have them read it to each other. So they will be reading one to each other as this last reading. When they finish that, you'd say, okay, everyone, it's time for 3 o'clock. Everybody would go to 3 o'clock. At 3 o'clock is just some comprehension questions. And, you could do this. You could have them copy the questions down and answer them. If you really want to get on, if you don't have the time or you're more interested in oral, you could have them answer this with each other orally and kind of go around the room, make sure people are understanding it, and do a comprehension check with the class afterwards before you move on. So it's up to you how much time you want to spend on this. They have to understand the reading before they can analyze the text. And with ESL, it's especially important to be sure of comprehension before you try to teach analysis of a text, because you can't analyze what you don't understand. After the 3 o'clock, you review with everyone. You go to 4 p.m. 4 p.m. is the writing. Now, this definitely would take longer. This may be something that you would start with the students. You'd have them decide if they're going to do A or B, and you probably give them a certain time period. Again, they've done something before this similar. If it is the very first time they've ever done anything like this, because most of the stories that they have on Marshall, the resource that I'm using online, has similar activities, but the poem was a little bit different. So you could go over this with them a bit. You could have them just free write for a little bit, and do a timed writing, and then, go back to this the next day or sign up for homework, because you don't want to spend too much time at the writing at this point because you're working on this reading skill. However, I do think it's very important to continue with the writing part, as I said, either for homework or the next day. Let's go to 5 o'clock now. 5 o'clock, we're going to go back over the definitions. Because it's their second exposure to this, they've been presented once, now they're being exposed again. I've redefined it, and they read it to themselves, and they have to answer the question. Is it a poem or story? How can you tell? Again, you could have them do this orally and go around and check, and then check, come back together and debrief, or you could have them write their answers down as well. I think it's important. Some of the times I don't put why on here, but as you need to make sure that they can answer why, because the whole idea of the critical thinking skills is not just saying yes or no. It's like when you evaluate something, you say you like something, that's not good enough. You have to identify why you like it and give the evidence of why you like something or why something is good or not. At this point, you discuss as a class, and you go to 6 p.m. author. The author is really kind of interesting. When we did the poem before, there was an author that the poem was credited to. However, I haven't gone through it with them. There is no author on this page. So they're going to come across the point that there is no author. So they're going to have to think about, who could the author be? How do we know who the author is? And you have to you could bring up the fact that there's anonymous authors as you go through this. So again, they're having to extend beyond just answering a question with a one word, okay? After the 6 o'clock, you go to the 7 o'clock. We're looking at audience. The audience is who the story is written for. Who is the audience for this story? Well, they need to tell you, but then you have to ask them why. Why do you think that? What is evidence from that reading? And if you want to bring that reading up, again, it's under the ESL activity goals, I think, goal story. So basically, if you read this again, you see how it starts with some dialogue, and then Eve goes to the park, she jogs, then she returns to the park, and she can make it, and she jogs to the second park bench. Then she can jog the whole park. 6 weeks pass. Each time she jogs, she sets small goals. Now she can jog 3 lengths. Then she sees a sign about a 5K run. It's the end of summer. She wants to jog in the 5K run. That's her new goal. So the whole thing is about goals. The audience for this story, you might get different answers. And as long as they justify it, obviously it's not written for a child because it's talking about an adult. It's written probably for someone that's, an adult or a young person. It could be a teen. And, that could be the audience. It's kind of a general audience. However, some of your students might say, well, it's written for the people who are going to read this story. And that's true. These were written at a very low literacy level on purpose for adults who are very low literacy. So if somebody actually analyzes it and gets that, they're absolutely correct. So but it takes different thinking skills to see the evidence and explain why you choose who the audience is. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so now we've got the main, we go at 7 o'clock, we go on now to the main idea, 8 p.m. The main idea is what the story is about. What's the main idea of the story? Most of the students are going to get this, but again, you want to ask why. Why do you say that? How do you know? How do you know? How did you figure that out? It's super important because every time they go and figure out main idea, they're going to be looking for what. It's a concept that most students will get, but you need to teach it because some of them maybe haven't had it before, except in the one presentation we did with the poem right before this, okay? After 8 o'clock, we're going into 9 o'clock. We're looking at details. Details include information that the story gives us and lists 3 details from the story. One of the things I like to do with things like, if I had some students that were more advanced and I had some that were very, very low level, If the ones were really low level, I might say they have to find one detail and write it down. If they're really advanced, in addition to finding details, I might ask them to combine all those details into one nice complex sentence using a particular words to tie the sentences together. Sometimes that's a great way to differentiate within your classroom without having to plan a lot. Is it even on the spur sometimes? I mean, I like to think of ahead of time, but a lot of times as I'm teaching, because I always taught like in high school and in adult ed, multi-levels. And you've got to, you do things together as a class, but then different groups, different levels can do different things with the same text that challenge them. So here they're doing details. At this point, we're going to go after 9 p.m. We come together, we review, then we go to 10 p.m. 10 p.m. is our point of view. Point of view, the way that it's defined like an English literature major, a point of view is going to be first person, second person, and third person. The standard actually says viewpoints. It's very difficult. I don't know if they mean points of view or viewpoints, but I'm interpreting as points of view, which is something we should teach our students. The point of view of a narration. Depending on the level of the class, you can bring up the idea of the narrator. I didn't use that as one of my vocabulary words. Maybe if I went and did this again, I'd add it. I just thought about, that it could have been added. Sometimes you don't want to give too many new vocabulary words and too many concepts at one time. When you go back to this again, you're never going to teach something one time. When you go back to it, you could always add that if you don't get to it. But the narrator is going to be the first person, the second person, or the third person. It ties very well for ESL into grammar. And most of our students, even low level, have been studying the I and the you and the he or she. So they know to look for that in the story. But it's the point of view the author is using in the story. When you see that story again, pull it up real quickly again. The story starts with dialogue, okay? And it starts with an I. So some of them might be tricked. So this is another great point of discussion. Yes, it starts with an I, but it says Eve was thinking about it, and it's her dialogue. And then you can go into further discussion about how you're looking for beginners. I tell them to look for what's most of the story. It's Eve, it's she, it's she, it's she. And as they get more advanced and understand more English, you can explain what dialogue is and how it's inserted into the story. But the dialogue has Eve doing the dialogue, which is third person. We got to finish up because I know it's almost 5. So let's go back to our last 11 o'clock purpose. We're at the last one. The purpose is why the author writes a story. I'm starting to talk about PIE, which is persuade, inform, and entertain. This is something you would follow up a lot. This is a very important skill to teach, but I'm teaching at very, very basic level. What is the author's purpose for writing this story? And you can share with them as they come up, why do you think so? You're going to have some of them say persuade you to set your own goal, and some of them are going to say to inform you about Eve and her goals, and they're both correct. And that's another great thinking skill to think about. And, why do you think it's to persuade? I personally feel it is to persuade because if you look at all of the resources on Marshall Adult Education, a lot of it is trying to persuade people to make good choices. But the students may not see that, and I see it that way. So they have to defend their choices. Anyhow, this is kind of the wrap-up, the guided practice. After this, they go into independent practice. If you go download that lesson, you'll see I created some worksheets, and I told you online where to do free worksheets that they could take home for independent practice on the vocabulary. And then there's also an activity where they have to do this kind of questions with a different text. They have to answer the same things on their own with a different text. So I hope you have enjoyed that. I do think it's a strategy you could use. You don't want to use it every day, but it's fun, and it's just a great way to get people moving. You still are directing the students, but they're doing a lot of exploration, oral and writing and reading and listening on their own. So I think we're finished.
Thank you so much, Denise. Gosh, we have our timing down just right this time. So we have 2 minutes for you to ask Denise questions if you have any questions or comments about this lesson. Yes, it takes time to prepare, but if you look at that Marshall Adult Education website, a lot of this is there.
Yeah, the questions I did, and a lot of it, once you start looking at these things, you could reuse this. And yes, it took me some time, and I enjoyed doing it, but now I hope everybody will share this with everybody else. It's a low-level lesson. You can find, a lot of people use Ventures. They have the college and career readiness worksheets that go with it, and you can find some of this, but probably not at the very, very basic level. You can find main idea and details, but author's purpose and point of view and genre, you may have to look at the more advanced levels. But I tell you, I really encourage people to use those resources as well as this resource, because you'll find a lot of very appropriate reading for students. It's exciting.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Denise. And Patrick is raising a question as we come to the end, which is this going to be the end of this project, or will it be continued on? And we are in the process of developing what the continuing support will be for this project, so I'm not in a position to open my mouth about it right now, but hopefully you will be hearing about future plans in the near future. So, thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend. What's coming up next? This is our second webinar. We have one more in May, which is only a few weeks away, actually. So it'll be on May 10th at 1 or May 11th at 4. And I guess you're the Friday group, so you'll be coming on May 11th. And I really appreciate how many of you are here today. I really wasn't expecting that, so that's great. And that will be our wrap-up for the currently funded project. So go to the COP to find this. I'll post it right now, the slides from this webinar, and also to find Denise's lesson materials. So thank you so much, everyone, and see you online.
Thanks, everybody. I just want to jump in here from Train PD. This is Anne Marie again. Beth Ponder has not been able to join us the last 2 days, so I want to say on behalf of us at Train PD, first of all, thanks to Mike Saenz and Elizabeth Moya and Denise Guckert for great presentations, and to Marion for all of her support over this last year. And I want to thanks to all of you for being here on a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock, well now 5 o'clock, or 4 o'clock if you're in El Paso. So I want to say thank you again, and we appreciate you all and all your hard work.